Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I am delighted to bring back to our show former Illinois Governor Pat Quinn is here. Pat, how have you been?
Well, very good. Very busy this summer, Joan. We were able, with the assistance of Commissioner Donna Miller from the South Suburbs, Cook County Commissioner, she sponsored a resolution at the Cook County Board to put a millionaire tax on the county ballot as an advisory referendum this November 3rd. It's called the Millionaire Amendment for property tax relief and education. It would raise the income tax only on millionaires by 3% and use the resulting money, about $4.5 billion, half for schools and half for property tax relief for families and businesses all over Illinois. And I really want to salute Donna and all the commissioners on the Cook County Board and President Tony Preckwinkle. Everybody in Cook County, city and suburbs, this November 3rd will get a chance to vote on this question. And I think it's the best way to get the legislature and the governor to put this on the ballot in the next election in 2028.
So if this passes and goes into effect, what does that mean? Like once a year we'll get a check, like a refund? Is that how it would work?
That's what happened back in 2019. The Illinois legislature passed a law for annual property tax rebates for those who own homes or small apartments all across Illinois. And that law said that every year the state would give a property tax rebate. And they set up a fund called the Property Tax Relief Fund in order to pay for this. Well, unfortunately, there's no money in the fund. They never appropriated any money for the Property Tax Relief Fund since 2019, 2020, whenever it was. So the idea of the Millionaire Amendment for property tax relief is to provide the money, not from everyday people, but rather from those who are so blessed to declare more than $1 million a year in their income tax. They would pay a little bit higher income tax, 3% higher, and that money would be used to fund the property tax relief fund and rebates for everyone who owns a home all across Illinois, apartments, condos, that kind of thing as well.
Well, you know, if somebody wants to pay me $1 million, I'd be happy to pay more tax, Pat. That seems like a fair trade. Anybody out there feels like hiring me for $1 million a year? I will help pay that tax so you can get money off your property taxes.
Well, here's the story. All across America, millionaire amendments are being passed by states. It began in Massachusetts in 2022. People petitioned onto the ballot there a millionaire amendment, a little higher income tax on the millionaires. That passed overwhelmingly. Then this year, the state of Washington, the state of Rhode Island and Maine and Hawaii all passed millionaire amendments, raising the income tax only on millionaires in order to fund important things, schools as well as property tax relief in our state. So this is a way that we, the people, can kind of tell legislators and all the elected officials, including the statewide officials like the governor, they're running for office on November 3rd. This is what the people want. A lot of times, you know, I was governor of Illinois. I believe in the power of referendum. Sometimes the office holders don't want to have referendums, but I think a good way to get the pulse of everyday people who live from paycheck to paycheck is to have referendums that really matter to your pocketbook. They deal with affordability. And our property taxes in Illinois, we have the highest in the whole country. And we're going to do something about it. We've got to do it at the ballot box. And this referendum in Cook County, it's advisory, but it tells the legislators, the governor, everybody, this is what the people want.
Yeah. I'm one of those peoples. I would like that very, very much. I want to ask you also about this thing where you're getting together with a group of former governors, and you want the Supreme Court. You're urging the Supreme Court reject the Trump administration's effort to revive an executive order that would expand federal oversight of state-run elections. The feds shouldn't have anything to do with elections. That is the purview of the state. When they made the Dobbs decision, they were talking about abortion. Oh, that's not really a federal thing. That should be decided by the states. Tell me about this.
Well, this is a very important issue you identified there, Joan, because in the U.S. Constitution, it's crystal clear that running elections, whether they be the elections for president or elections locally for governor and local offices, that is a matter for the states to handle, not for the centralized government in Washington to run everything. That the founding fathers of our country did not want that. They did not want the president to be able to control elections in every precinct in America. And so this is a very important legal constitutional principle. Trump is trying to take over, and he even wants to use the post office, the United States Post Office, founded by Benjamin Franklin, to identify how the federal government will run elections and who can be eligible to be a voter, a male voter, if you want to vote for by mail rather than in person. Trump is really trying this takeover. So it's a very interesting group of governors, of which I'm one. I was governor 6 years in Illinois. But we have governors who are both Democrat and Republican, who have served in state government and who have seen firsthand the importance of the state to run the elections, not to have the federal government butting in and trying to take over. So this is a super important issue, and cases going to the Supreme Court, and there's something, a principle of law called friend of the court briefs, amicus briefs, they call them. And I signed on to that, and I read it the other night. It's a very well-written kind of argument on behalf of governors that what Trump is trying, taking over elections from the federal level, taking it away from our state of Illinois and every other state, is blatantly unconstitutional and bad for America, bad for the right to vote, which is the fundamental right that everyone has who is old enough to vote, and when they register to vote, their vote really matters, and we have to protect that in every which way.
Pat, I heard a soundbite from a congressman, Jim Himes, and he laid out a scenario that I thought sounded frighteningly possible. He said, he was kind of like, when the midterms come around, there probably won't be National Guard or ICE troops, if they're going to try to purge the voter rolls. But he said the real fear he has is right now it looks like the Democrats are going to do extremely well in this election, certainly retake the House, possibly retake the Senate. And this person said, my fear is, that weird speech he gave a few weeks ago where he was talking about election interference and Venezuela and all this stuff. He thinks that the president is setting the stage. If he loses big in the midterms, that he'll announce that Maduro's brother or somebody else he has in his pocket told me that Venezuela interfered with the voting machines. This is not an accurate, free, and fair election, and then either declare it null and void or have the feds step in or do something like that. And, that kind of, if he can do it, if nobody reins him in, that sounds like a viable path for disrupting the midterms. What do you think?
Well, I'm concerned. I think I saw Jim Hines on TV talking about that. He's a congressman from Connecticut, a Democrat, who has been on the Intelligence Committee, I think, for quite some time. So it is something that we must, as citizens and voters, keep an eye on. We cannot allow the president or any of his allies to take away our democracy. For 250 years, since we had the Declaration of Independence, we believe in government of the people, consent of the governed. We don't want to have the politicians like the president taking over. That's not America. And so I think here in Illinois, we're, the home of Abraham Lincoln. We believe in the fundamental right to vote that's in our state constitution as well as our federal constitution, and we've got to protect that. And so, there are various groups that have come together now to make sure that on November 3rd of this year and before November 3rd, where, you can vote in person ahead of time or you can have mail voting. These are features that encourage people to vote. When I was governor, we got a law passed that I advocated where people could register to vote online. Beforehand, it was a much more cumbersome process. You had to go to an office and sign up. Now you can do that online in Illinois, register to vote. Very important. Then, after that passed, I wanted to make sure that some people, it's maybe the last minute they decide, well, I'm going to vote, but they're not registered. So we got another law passed where people could register to vote on election day. They could literally go to the polling place, stand in line, and when their turn came, get registered before they vote. And matter of fact, the first time that happened was November of 2014. And there was a fella who waited till 2 or 3 in the morning. It was a big, long line in Chicago. I think it was at Wells Park or somewhere. And he waited in line to vote. And I was so impressed by that. I saw his name in the paper. His name was Dakota McGee. Mr. McGee believed in the power of everyday people voting, and he was going to get registered and then vote on that election. And so I called him up, or found his phone number. I took him out to dinner with his girlfriend. And it seems to me we need many more Dakota McGees in Illinois and in America,
Yeah, that's exactly the kind of story that you want to hear. Well, I just hope that whatever comes around in the midterms, that we are prepared for it, that somebody smarter than me thinks of all the different things that could go wrong and is already preparing some kind of remedy for it, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. I also wanted to talk to you. A while back, you were circulating a petition about the Bears and how the Bears should stay in Illinois.
Right.
What do you think about that? What do you think about the viability of Indiana?
I don't think very highly of Indiana hosting the Bears. They're the Chicago Bears. They're not the Hammond Hoosiers, We don't need that. The fans have been loyal for more than a century, and that includes me. I can remember watching the 1963 Bears win the championship. And so we've got to keep our team in Illinois. I was looking at the board of directors of the Bears, 7 persons on that board of directors. 5 of them are McCaskies, the McCaskey family. The franchise is worth $8.9 billion going up year after year with all the television revenue and all of that. So it seems to me, we won last year, the Bears did, and the playoffs, very exciting because of the fans. They were the 12th person on the field. They were cheering so loudly, the stadium was rocking, Soldier Field. And to take that away from the people of Illinois and Bears fans, this is plain wrong. I really don't believe in what they're asking for. They want huge property tax breaks. Well, when they bought their property in Arlington Heights, when people buy property, guess what? You do have to pay the property tax when that comes due. The Bears seem to think, well, no, we don't want to pay any property taxes at all, ever. And so I don't think that's a very healthy attitude. We don't want big millionaires and billionaires shifting the burden, the tax burden, onto everyday people who are struggling to make ends meet. We need a fair system. It's one of the reasons I'm for the millionaire amendment for property tax relief and education to help Illinois reform its property tax system, lower the property taxes, not on the big shots, but on everyday people struggling to stay in their home.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can't blame a company that's looking to move I can't blame them for trying to get the best deal possible. But it just seems, so far it looks like the the government of Illinois has held the line. You know, Governor Pritzker said, you know what? I will do what I would do for any big business in Illinois. You know, I'll help out with infrastructure, you know, maybe build some new sewers or something. He said, but we are not going to go over and beyond anything that we would do for a company, we'll do for the Bears, but not more. I thought that was fair.
Yeah, I think that's, you got to be prudent with tax money. You know, when I was governor, the Ricketts family bought the Cubs. And there were some intimations that they would want state funding to fix up Wrigley Field. And I basically said, no, that's the duty of the owners who bought the team, fixing up their own field. You know, it's a shrine. I was there on the 100th anniversary of Wrigley Field back in 2014, I think it was. But, you know, once you bought a team, or bought a stadium, you don't expect taxpayers at large to fix it up for you. So they weren't too happy to hear that, but we had to hold the line there. And I think it's important for fans, and I'm going to the Sox game tonight, and I think it's super important that our teams that we revere and root for, whether it's the Bulls, the Blackhawks, the Bears, Cubs, Sox. I was at the game the other night for the Sky. These are our teams. We love them. We support them through thick and thin, but we don't expect the taxpayers to have to subsidize them in an inordinate way too much. You know, we got to draw the line and stand up for the taxpayer.
Well, and especially when you see these sports organizations in other cities and how they're making billions with a B in profits, it kind of seems like, one other question. Do you think the White Sox are doing so well because of Pope Leo? Do you think there's a connection there? Do you think we have there's a pipeline to God or something?
Well, we finally needed a pope from America. And where do you go in America to get a pope? But none other than the state of Illinois. He was born in Chicago, grew up in Dalton. Very important to have Pope Leo. He was there in the World Series at section 139. They have like a poster of the Pope right as you get into that section of the ballpark. And he's a fan. And he loves sports. I think he plays tennis even to this day in the 70s. So I think it's real important that we deliver a world championship. Ideally, the Sox play the Cubs in the World Series. It goes to 7 games.
You're asking for a lot. I'm not even sure God can make that happen.
Subway Series. I know how to get on the L back and forth. Chicago, from 35th Street up to Addison Street there in Addison. I think the way it works now, the World Series would be played by the team with the best record. They would be the home team. So the 7th game might be at Wrigley Field with the current records. But I could see let's see, who would we pick? Probably Mooney, a home run hitting fella that we just got this year. Would hit a home run in Wrigley Field into the basket to win the game, the final game. I don't want to alienate any of your Cubs fans. They would make the World Series, but it would be best for Illinois, I think, if the underdog White Sox prevailed in the 7-game World Series.
Well, Pat, Paul Shivari and a couple other CPTers do a sports show every Saturday. They call it the Sports Cubicle. I didn't realize you are as knowledgeable as you are, but I think you should be on the Sports Cubicle and chat with them.
All right.
Thank you for joining me today, though. I really appreciate it. It's always fun to talk with you.
Well, you're the best of all, and I always enjoy talking to you, and keep up the good work.
Thank you so much.